Hispanic and Latina women suffer disproportionate amounts of abuse and deserve a community to fight with and for them against the abuse and everyday oppression they face. It is important to address the possible theological understandings and responses to abuse for the Latina community specifically. It is imperative, then, as we address this issue of abuse and oppression, that we include the liberation theology made by and for Hispanic women. I want to highlight some foundations of Mujerista theology, as well as social Trinitarianism. Both perspectives will help us garner an understanding of the nature of oppression and abuse as sin. Latinas and abused women have used these perspectives as tools of empowerment, but the theological dogmas also lend valuable implications to non-Latinas and abuse survivors about how to stand in solidarity and provide support. Mujerista theology and social Trinitarianism provide understandings of the relational nature of humanity in the Trinity and the corrupted nature of abusive relationships and the oppression of Latina women. They also present methods to appeal the damaged imago Dei of a survivor and an oppressed person. To demonstrate this, I will first explain Mujerista theology as a framework within which Latina women find relationality and understanding of their cotidiano, or everyday, experience. It is the milieu in which they begin the fight for liberation and salvation. Next, I will describe social Trinitarianism as an understanding of the foundational relationality of human nature and the divine. I will then establish oppression as a form of abuse or corrupted relationship and describe some of the issues pertinent to Latina women survivors specifically. After that, I will examine how both theological dogmas present the triune God in solidarity with the abused and oppressed. And finally, I will emphasize some ways to support survivors and empower them in their lucha, or fight, against oppression and abuse. This theology is a combination of feminist theology and Latin American liberation theology, formulated out of the daily life of Hispanic women. It is a way to conceptualize the oppression they face in their cotidiano, or everyday. Hispanic, or Hispana, women's liberation theologians coined the name Mujerista to distinguish the specificity of their marginalized experience and fight against the oppression imposed upon them. A foundational aspect of Mujerista theology includes the relational understanding of humanity and therefore communities, something that's really important in Latinx cultures. The doctrine of the social trinity can help to conceptualize how abuse and oppression go against the divine relationship and fundamental human relationality. Social Trinitarianism is a reconceptualization of the divine trinity, wherein the trinity consists of three persons who relate to each other but also humankind as a community, defined by mutuality, equality, and reciprocity. Catherine Maury Lacuna argues the Trinity is of the most pragmatic and relational of Christian dogmas, capable of incorporating the intricacies of human relationships on an individual to societal level. Michelle Gonzalez asserts that the relational nature of humanity is grounded in God's Trinitarian nature as relational, and our reflection of this nature through the imago Dei. It represents a model which human relationships and communities should try to replicate. When this relationship is not embodied, it's been corrupted. And this is of course the case when discussing widespread oppression and the institutionalized racism, xenophobia, and misogyny faced by Hispanic women. Mujerista theology is built upon an integrated understanding of salvation and liberation. Salvation is defined and experienced within the framework of relationship and community. It means having a bond with God, something which does not exist without love of neighbor, as the two concepts are inseparable within this paradigm. Sin is viewed as that which hurts or corrupts relationship. While sin is personal and harmful to one's relationship with the divine, it also negatively impacts the entire community. Now, the definition of abuse is to treat a person with cruelty or violence regularly or repeatedly, and oppression is defined as prolonged cruel or unjust treatment or control. Therefore, I argue that oppression is a systemic, institutional form of abuse, a corruption of interpersonal relationships as well as humanity's relationship with the divine, and consequently, a sin. Mujerista theology envisions and works toward a community in which harmonious relationships with God, a relationship inherently free from oppression, is experienced. While this may not be entirely feasible in the current conditions of the world, to neglect striving toward this purpose would be a disservice to Latinas and abuse survivors' imago Dei, which is continuously invalidated. This is only one consequence of abuse and oppression amid numerous devastating outcomes. But your bodily autonomy, self-image, and personhood are being stripped away with each encounter. How can you be imago Dei, an image of God, when you have been broken down over and over again? And moreover, Latinas are in a more precarious social position. The intersection of being an ethnic minority and a woman adds to oppression. It also adds multiple layers of stress and trauma as a result of the constant quote-unquote low-level maltreatment. For example, women from Latin American countries or of Latino descent are more likely to have violence perpetrated against them, the mental and physical consequences of which are exacerbated by the various sources of stress. They are also less likely to seek help from law enforcement due to language and/or culture barriers, as well as a fear of being caught if they are in the country without papers. Law enforcement in the United States has not historically been helpful about violence against women, much less for minority women. So really, this means the affirmation of fundamental human relationality is an insufficient response to the abuse of Latino communities, but understanding the relational aspect of human identity is central to pursuing justice and solidarity for those who have been harmed by others. Furthermore, the fact that human beings are fundamentally relational cannot diminish the reality of abuse, exploitation, and marginalization within a corrupted relationship, whether it be the broader issue of oppression or individual interpersonal abuse. In actuality, this fact demands that we attend to these concerns in more focused and sustained ways. So we can now look to social Trinitarianism and Mujerista theology for manifestations of solidarity. Mujerista theology asserts that Jesus defied misrecognition to properly recognize, value, and minister to ostracized women. Where the abused and oppressed have been hurt in mind, body, and spirit because of invalidation and misrecognition, Jesus brings healing through recognizing them as imago Dei and communicates with them as such. Jesus' life and ministry involved active resistance to the abuse of power in other people. The cross was the outcome of his life of pursuing justice. Many theologians agree that the Trinity is one who cannot be separated and thus suffers as one entire being on the violence of the cross. And some theologians believe that Jesus voluntarily submitted to the cross as a triune God suffering in solidarity with victims of oppression and abuse, reaffirming the unity of the Trinity with humanity and victims. With this solidarity, survivors may use the cross as a symbol of empowerment rather than suffering, as Jesus suffers with them in their unjust pain and trauma, while laboring with them to resist the sin of abuse. As we are created in the image and likeness of the triune God, we have an ethical obligation to respect that we are created as a reflection of God collectively as well, and that this relationship is characterized by mutuality, equality, and inclusivity. This should inform us moving forward to heal the spiritual wound caused by the sinful, corrupted relations of abuse and oppression. Mary Catherine Hilker asserts that if the Trinitarian model offers the ideal paradigm for social relations, then unity and diversity and radical equality become ethical and political mandates. Only if human communities and individuals rise up in indignation, protest, solidarity, and action on behalf of those whose basic human dignity has been violated can the image of God also be revealed as compassionate love and solidarity with us. To reaffirm imago Dei of abused women, Mujeristas have reconceptualized difference, making it relational for oppressed groups. This, in addition with developing, strengthening, and changing consciousness, leads to mutuality, solidarity, and a communal praxis. In this vein, according to Mujerista theologian Dr. Ada Maria Isasi Diaz, full humanity of Latinas is promoted through the sharing of personal narratives. As Dr. Isasi Diaz states, our insistence on speaking is not only a matter of making known our past, it is also a matter of participating in making present and future history, of being protagonists, of being agents in our own history. The idea from the beginning of Mujerista theological thought has been to give a platform for the voices of Latinas. Mujerista theology allows oppressed and abused women to speak rather than to be spoken for. As Dr. Isasi Diaz says, we are asking for a respectful silence from all those who have power to set up definitions of what it is to be human, a respectful silence so others can indeed hear our cries denouncing oppression and injustice, so others can understand our vision of a just society.